After my mother-in-law, whom I loved like my own mother, passed away, a lawyer came to our house with a letter. My name is Sharon, and I'm 43 years old. The letter started by saying, "If you're reading this, I'm no longer in this world." Seeing her familiar handwriting made me cry. My father-in-law died when my husband and I were still young, and there were no close relatives left in his family. My husband and I didn't have children, but we lived happily and modestly with my mother-in-law. We had a great relationship. My husband often said we were like mother and daughter. Sadly, my husband passed away from cancer last year, leaving just my mother-in-law and me. Then, unexpectedly, she was killed in a car accident. The circumstances of the accident were strange. She was found collapsed on a road in a city she didn't belong to, and her bag was missing. The police are looking into the accident, but I was too shocked to answer their questions. I struggled to deal with the sudden loss of my mother-in-law. My husband's illness lasted a year, and we had time to grieve together, but now, with her gone, I felt incredibly lonely. My own parents had died of cancer, and my brother lived far away with his family. It was hard to reach out to my old friends since they were busy raising their kids. Then, a man claiming to be a lawyer called me. He sounded like he was in his 70s, around my mother-in-law's age. He apologized for not reaching out sooner and said he needed to give me something important. I wondered if it was a letter from my mother-in-law. I had never heard that she was in contact with a lawyer, and I worried it might be a scam, but I decided to meet him just in case. The letter continued, "I know this is a surprise, but please listen. There is danger coming your way. Believe me and run away immediately." As I read the letter, I looked at the lawyer sitting across from me and asked, "Do you know what this letter says? Was my mother-in-law in danger?" The handwriting was definitely hers. I recognized it right away, but the content didn't make sense to me. The situation felt so strange it seemed like a bad joke. My mother-in-law had died in a car accident, but the driver had already been caught. He said he found her lying in the road, which was why it took time to discover what happened. It looked like she had been hit and might have lost consciousness. If this letter was real, then my mother-in-law must have suspected someone was after her. If she knew, why didn't she run away? Tears filled my eyes again. The lawyer, remaining calm, said, "I haven't read the full content, but I can guess what it might be about." I was a bit annoyed at his vague answer, so I pressed him, "What did my mother-in-law tell you?" He replied, "I was the one who represented Oliver back then and was asked to help you." I was confused. Who is Oliver? The lawyer explained that my husband had a brother named Oliver, who was 6 years older than him. I had never heard of this brother from either my husband or my mother-in-law, and I had never seen any pictures of him either. The lawyer started pulling out some documents from a bag on the table. "Sharon, do you know that half of serious crimes in our country happen within families?" he said with a hint of irony in his voice. He explained that the family home, where we should feel safe, is often where tragic things happen, like one family member harming another. Then, he showed me an old photo of 4 people, a young man and woman who looked like parents, a boy, and a baby. The young woman looked familiar. It was my mother-in-law. At first, I didn't recognize the young man, but he looked like my husband. The boy also resembled the young man, almost as if they were father and son. The photo seemed to be taken during a trip to the beach, with everyone smiling in front of a large ship at the port. "That boy with the float is Oliver," the lawyer said. I stared at the picture of the boy, my husband's brother, whom I knew nothing about. The photo showed such a happy moment, and it made my chest hurt to think about what could have happened to him. Did Oliver cause some trouble? Was he the one who hurt my mother-in-law? The lawyer explained that this incident must have happened over 17 or 18 years ago, since my husband and I dated for 15 years before we got married. It seemed strange that I had never heard about any of this. He continued, "Oliver became a recluse starting in his first year of junior high because of bullying. 7 years later, he was involved in a serious incident." The lawyer described how Oliver, feeling hopeless after years of isolation, tried to commit suicide with his family one night. He went into his parents' room with a knife and struggled with his father, who woke up because of the noise. Even though he was badly injured, his father managed to subdue him. During the fight, my husband, who was just 14 at the time, heard his mother scream and called the police. The sound of sirens and ambulances disrupted the normally quiet neighborhood. At that time, issues like social isolation and mental health were often in the news, and the media sensationalized stories about reclusive kids plotting violence. I had heard news like that before, but I didn't realize it could be about my husband's family. Their story was different. The family couldn't handle the rumors and ended up moving multiple times, almost like they were fleeing. whether it was due to the father's severe injuries from the incident or the stress afterwards. My father-in-law passed away a few years later. My mother-in-law and my husband changed their names back to her maiden name, and they were finally able to lead a normal life in their new home. In situations like this, where a family member is both the victim and the perpetrator, it's hard to express emotions fully. You can't completely hate or blame anyone involved. It's all very confusing. If you suddenly find yourself in such a complicated situation, living under public scrutiny with rumors and criticism is incredibly hard. I hope you can understand the feelings of the deceased who couldn't talk to you, the lawyer said. I was speechless, overwhelmed by how harsh it all was. I had never thought about what happened to families after such an incident, but life continues as long as they are alive. The in-laws must have seen Oliver as their beloved child. The photo of Oliver I saw had a smile, just like my husband's, but he had some issues that couldn't be fixed, leading to a terrible tragedy later. Oliver was sentenced to prison for his actions. The lawyer explained. I represented Oliver. Remember, the same punishment applies even for an attempt. It could mean life imprisonment or a minimum of 5 to 20 years in prison. I interrupted him, asking, "Are you saying he could be out in just 5 years?" "Yes, he was released about 2 years ago," the lawyer replied. He explained that the prosecutor's office has a victim notification system. After a verdict, you can apply to be notified about an offender's release date. Even without that, my mother-in-law, being Oliver's biological mother, was informed of his whereabouts after he got out. At that time, my husband was undergoing cancer treatment, and she didn't want to worry him, so she didn't discuss it with him. The lawyer told me that Oliver committed the crime because he was feeling hopeless about his future. He hesitated but finally said Oliver wanted money to spend. After being a recluse for years, he secretly used my mother-in-law's credit card for online games and shopping, which led to his father scolding him. Apparently, he spent a lot of money buying weapons for a game the evening of the crime, and when his father took away his computer, he acted out. Oliver lied to the lawyer and didn't reveal the truth to his family, who hoped he would genuinely reflect on his actions while serving his sentence. They didn't share the full story about the defamation and slander he faced after being released. Was this silence out of love for him? The truth is, my mother-in-law often visited Oliver while he was in prison. Each time she came back disappointed because Oliver hadn't changed. My mother-in-law was worried about living with Oliver again after he was released. She was scared of the potential for violence, but she also knew that if she or her son were to die, Oliver would come to me asking for money. As his release date got closer, the paperwork became overwhelming, and she had to decide where to let him live. Distressed, she consulted a lawyer who was familiar with Oliver's case to help with the arrangements. I learned that 2 years ago, my mother-in-law had been helping Oliver by renting an apartment for him and doing his shopping. She had been giving him money from her savings and even some of her retirement funds. The inheritance she expected to receive if her son, my husband, died was being used to support Oliver. After his release, Oliver became a recluse again and didn't find a job. Money was tight, and through the lawyer, my mother-in-law conveyed to Oliver that she couldn't support him forever and he needed to find work. However, Oliver outright refused to do so. He would complain, saying, "Doesn't my mother love me? She always favors my brother. She won't give me money because my brother told her not to." The lawyer explained that, although it may have been an accident, my mother-in-law was still worried that Oliver might cause trouble. He kept insisting on getting more money from her. Oliver became aggressive with the lawyer, asking for details about my mother-in-law's income and her life, as well as those of his father and brother. Fortunately, the lawyer believed that Oliver didn't know our address, but I was still worried since his apartment was close to where my mother-in-law had died. Then, suddenly, the doorbell rang. The only visitor I expected was the lawyer. "Excuse me for a moment," I said, stepping away to check the peephole. My heart dropped when I saw a man who looked a lot like my husband, holding my mother-in-law's old bag. I quietly retreated to the living room and called the lawyer. "I think it might be Oliver. What should we do? He has my mother-in-law's bag." My voice shook with tension, and I could see the lawyer's expression turn serious. "Call the police right now," he said. Instead of calling the police, I panicked and ran out the back door toward the nearby police station. Did my mother-in-law and husband foresee this situation? Or had they unknowingly chosen to live close to the police? I didn't know what to think anymore. When Oliver saw the police officers who came with me, he tried to run away, but a police officer caught him. As I suspected, the man who looked like my husband was Oliver, my brother-in-law. The lawyer called him Oliver, which was likely his name. I had been calling him that because I had seen a family photo of him as a small boy, looking innocent, but now, he was an unhealthy-looking middle-aged man, and it strangely angered me that he resembled my husband. This man had caused so much pain to my mother-in-law and husband. I'm just here to collect my share of the inheritance. It exists, right? Even my younger brother died last year. Hand over my inheritance, he shouted, ignoring the police officer's questions. I was furious. I felt sorry for his childhood when he was teased so much that he couldn't go to school, but his actions after that were selfish and unforgivable. More than anything, I wanted to ask him, isn't that your mother's bag you're holding? What did you do to her? Did you hurt a frail woman? Hearing my words, the officers looked at the bag Oliver was holding, clearly flustered. Oliver tried to hide it, but it was too late. One officer reached for it, and Oliver snarled, "Hey, this is my money, I can't help it. It was the last thing my mom said. I only hit her a few times to teach her a lesson for being cheeky," he said, and his words made me shudder. There was no sense in what he said, and he showed no remorse. "Hey, you're my brother's wife, aren't you? Neither my mom nor my brother are here anymore, so you have an obligation to support me." Maybe my mother-in-law and husband hid Oliver's existence from me to protect me. They must have thought that if I didn't know, I could avoid getting involved. "No, Mrs. Sharon, you don't have that obligation," the lawyer interrupted, but I doubted the law would work on Oliver. He seemed invincible, with nothing to lose. He didn't understand common sense, nor did he want to follow the law. Maybe that's why my mother-in-law never wanted me to meet him. I could only imagine how difficult her life had been. I hadn't finished reading my mother-in-law's letter, but it was clear she was worried about me knowing her life was in danger. Her pain and sadness were heartbreaking. "Because of you, my mother-in-law and husband were hurt so much. I will never forgive you. You will face the law," I thought. While it was true that the direct cause of her death was being hit by a car, Oliver left my unconscious mother-in-law on the road. He was not someone who should be allowed to roam free. I promised myself that I would do whatever it took to send him back to prison. The lawyer stood beside me and said, "I'll help you." Oliver was taken to the police station. The blood on my mother-in-law's bag and other evidence pointed to him as the culprit, and he was sent back to prison. I returned home with the lawyer and finally read my mother-in-law's letter to the end. It was filled with apologies and overflowing love for me. At the end, she wrote, "Life is still long. Please live a happier, freer life, Sharon." Seeing that, I couldn't hold back my tears.